Andrew II. Andrew II is one of the most consequential monarchs in the history of the realm of Saint Stephen. His reign is the starting point of so many things we will have to deal with over the next hundreds of years. Almost immediately upon his ascension, Andrew II began to implement major changes, which produced interesting results considering his apparent rash, impatient, and laissez-faire attitude. Andrew II instituted his very appropriately called new institutions. He remodeled his kingdom under the influence of Western Franco-German feudalistic culture, which started to spread through new forms of writing and education. His revolutionary idea was to start giving out royal crown land in perpetuity to his close friends, allies, or those he wished to make his close friends and allies and their heirs, along with new positions with the authority over his other lesser vassals. Andrew officially created the great landholders and magnates of the realm of Saint Stephen, which were presumably the king's most loyal band of friends and allies on whom he lavished titles, land, positions, and seats in the royal council. This will start to lead to a very severe weakening of the crown down the line, as Andrew was giving out rights to royal land and granting a much wider array of privileges than ever before. Why Andrew II took these actions is debatable and ranges from that he genuinely thought this was a good idea for his hands-off style of management, or that he was put under pressure of already existing structures and he just made them more powerful and official. I'm honestly leaning towards the former option because Andrew's future actions do indicate to me that he was a very hands-off ruler who wanted to do other things more befitting a medieval king. So he entrusted all the management to his closest vassals. That's what they were there for anyway, right? This sudden change of organization in the realm put the defensive and administrative system founded on the minor and mid-nobility into shambles, as Andrew's new institutions severely weakened and alienated the minor and middle nobility, who he did not consider worth his time anymore. So he decided to delegate them under others. To be honest, the system was already in a bit of a shambles, as some of these minor nobles had gone up in status while others had gone down, some had acquired more land, others lost land, and there were lots of other factors. The confusion centering around authority and jurisdiction, which Andrew's new institutions brought in, did not help resolve anything. To give Andrew II some credit, a lot of the minor and middle nobility were militarily stagnating. Their small and dispersed parcels of land were proving not to be enough to finance newer equipment or to improve defensive structures. Concentrating land and resources allowed a single vassal to not only finance himself, but to equip and arm a force of his own, which was not directly loyal to the king. Keep that in mind. Andrew II was getting himself into a lot of hot water by messing with all of this. He was, in full legal effect, breaking his oaths and the social contract that had existed for centuries between the king and all of his direct vassals, from the highest to the lowest. And to make it all even worse, by handing over his own land, he was also handing over direct access to revenue. Now, it will take some time for all these events to mature, so let's take a look at what Andrew actually did at the start of his rule. In 1205, Andrew went on a campaign in Galicia to settle some old scores, declaring himself King of Galicia and Lodomeria. while at the same time claiming to be helping the very young Daniel Romanovich Rurikid secure his title of ruler of Galicia-Volhynia. While Andrew was away on his many attempts to take Galicia, Andrew's wife, Gertrude, of the Andexmeran dynasty of the Holy Roman Empire, filled the court with Germans, mostly members of her own family. Her brother Berthold was made Archbishop of Kolosha, and Ban of Croatia, and Voivode of Transylvania. She protected two of her other brothers who were on the run for taking part in the murder of the King of Germany, Philip of Swabia. And she helped numerous favorites achieve high positions, which did not make a lot of the nobility happy. So they killed her in 1213 and tore her body to pieces. Upon finding out about the deed, Andrew returned home immediately, and from all the known conspirators, he had the power to punish only one, while the others were expected never to do that again. Count Peter of Torre was presumed to hold a grudge against the queen after she fired him from his position, so he was the obvious scapegoat. Count Peter was subsequently impaled on the walls of a fortress which, by legend, would bear his name, Petrovaradin, or today Novi Sad in Serbia, although it's far more likely that the town was named after St. Peter. Meanwhile, the Pope was constantly nagging Andrew to fulfill the crusading vow of his father, and with the situation in the realm slowly heating up, Andrew thought that 1217 was a great time to leave his realm and go on a crusade. The fifth crusade, that is, which he will lead. So he sent out a call. Andrew II's crusading call appeared to work, with him gathering one of the largest armies that will march for the Holy Land. The army, however, was paid for by amassing debts, calling in huge tax levies, debasing currency. How much more foreshadowing do I need to do here? He and Leopold VI, Duke of Austria, departed on their crusade from Split on the Adriatic coast and landed at Cyprus, where the King of Cyprus, Hugh de Lusignan, joined them, and they departed for the Holy Land. And after one victory and a series of failed sieges, Andrew decided to return home, forcing his companions to soon turn home as well. He kind of fulfilled his promise. Along the way home, he passed through the shattered remnants of the Byzantine Empire. Along the way, he arranged the marriage of his heir Prince Bela to the daughter of the Emperor of Nicaea, and the marriage of his daughter Mary to Ivan Asen II of Bulgaria, because Ivan would not let him pass through his lands otherwise. Upon his return home, he found his realm in complete and utter chaos, and the royal treasury empty. And then came a conspiracy centered around his son and heir Bela. The Pope was informed about the conspiracy, and it's written that some perverts manipulated Bela and forced Andrew II to declare him co-king. Then in 1222 came the big one, the Grand Revolt of the minor and middle nobility of 1222. They felt that the king had repeatedly not only neglected his duties, but also abused his power, and actively tried to subvert their rights, liberties, and privileges, thus breaking the natural law and the social contract. To simplify, they had an idea of how the king was supposed to act in his relationship with them, and Andrew II repeatedly not only did not act in line with that idea, he was undermining it. Thus they had the right, some would say the duty, to correct him. The revolt caught Andrew and his magnate supporters off guard, and Andrew was forced to sign the Golden Bull of 1222. Not that Golden Bull. The bull was written as a guarantee of rights, liberties, and privileges to the servants of the king, that is to say, all the king's direct vassals, So for the first time, the previously verbally and traditionally understood rights, liberties, and privileges that the king's duty was to protect were put into writing and outlined. It begins as follows. In the name of the Holy Trinity and indivisible unity, Andrew, by the grace of God, King of Hungary, Dalmatia, Croatia, Rama, Serbia, Galicia, and Lodomeria, in perpetuity, since the liberties established by Saint Stephen the King in favor of the nobles of our realm as well as of other persons have been diminished in many respects by the authority of certain kings, some of whom in personal anger took vengeance, others of whom paid heed to false counsel of wicked and self-seeking men, these same nobles have repeatedly importuned our serenity and that of their kings, our predecessors, with numerous petitions and entreaties for the reform of our kingdom. The rights, liberties, and privileges of the servants of the king were outlined in the 30 clauses that followed. By clause 2, no nobleman can be arbitrarily arrested. In addition, by clause 8, no noble is to be put on trial without formal approval of the king and the king's council. By clause 3, no taxes will be levied on the nobles or the church. By clause 7, the nobility is not obliged to join the king in an aggressive war outside the realm. If they do, the king must pay them. However, all nobility is required to defend the realm should an invader enter it without exception. By clause 11, no foreigner shall receive titles or positions without the approval of the royal council, etc., etc., etc. But the most famous is the so-called clause 31. It's not formally the 31st clause, but it's the consequence for breaching the agreement at the end of the bull, and it reads as follows. We have also decreed that if we or any of our successors at any time should seek to oppose the terms of this settlement, both the bishops and other baronial retainers, as well as the nobles of the realm, singularly and in common, both present and future generations, shall by this authority have the right in perpetuity to resist and speak against us and our successors without the charge of high treason. The right to revolt was formalized and put down on paper. If the king breaks his oath, then all his vassals have the right to revolt and forcibly set him back on the right track. You will note that in the language of the bull, it is Andrew II giving, that is to say confirming, all of those rights, and nowhere is there even a hint of removal of the king. The top-down social order is being preserved, as is the royal dignity of the king. Now, one tiny problem that almost nullifies everything I've just told you. Soon after the revolt ended, Andrew II and his allies disregarded the bull, effectively rendering it null and void. Andrew's great noblemen, removed by revolt, regained their positions. A new revolt didn't happen, as the king and his allies had returned to positions of strength. But, and this is a big but, the rights, liberties, and privileges the bull outlined became the basic rights for the nobility in the realm. This is the first written constitutional document of the realm of Saint Stephen, and successive monarchs will be asked to reaffirm it, and generations will look back to it. Things written in here will come back again and again and again as this story progresses. And just because the king is momentarily powerful enough to ignore it, does not mean he always will be. And I told you the 13th century was going to be a wild ride, because there's more insanity and constitutional legality incoming. Now, after the revolt, Andrew attempted a few more military adventures to the east with little to no success. In 1226 he made his son Bela the Duke of Transylvania, where there was a strange increase in Cuman activity. Bela spent his time subjugating and converting the Cumans on the border, some of whom were very eager to gain his protection. Bela advanced further into Cumania by 1233, declaring himself king of Cumania. Back home, during Andrew II's reign, religious tolerance in the realm was on the downturn. Rome, under threat of increasing heretical movements and with newfound authority, decided to put its foot down. Andrew received constant beratements from the church and part of the nobility for the freedoms Orthodox Christians, Jews, and Muslims received in his realm, and for not doing enough to combat heresy. The Golden Bull itself included clauses against Jewish service to the crown. Around the same time, Franciscan and Dominican monastic orders started to establish themselves all across Europe, to evangelize and to combat heresy. Andrew's son, Koloman, the Duke of Slavonia, was helping them to deal with heretics in Bosnia. Again, Andrew died on the 21st of September, 1235, and was succeeded by his son Bela IV. Soon after his death, Andrew's last son, Stephen, was born, and quite morbidly named Stephen Posthumus. Meanwhile, during Andrew II's reign, the lords of Bribir, now slowly becoming more known as the Šišić dynasty, came to greater prominence. Lord Gregory III Šišić of Bribir seized the opportunities offered by Andrew II's reign. He managed to get the upper hand in local conflicts between the other power holders and even within his own family, becoming one of the strongest landholders in the region. It was this constant fighting along the coastline between the Dalmatian cities themselves, the Croatian lords on the mainland, and Venice from the sea, that dominated Dalmatian politics during the reign of the Arpad dynasty. The dynasty itself took little to no interest in Dalmatian affairs, leaving it mostly in a state of constant flux. Around the same time, in the north of Dalmatia, the family of the lords of Krk started to establish themselves on the mainland after a grant of land from King Andrew. But the lords of Krk were double vassals, the family swearing fealty to both the Republic of Venice and the King of Hungary, Dalmatia, and Croatia, a rather common practice among landholders in bordering peripheral territories.